Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
The police arrested my parents, and I'm freaking out. Part 2. Third post. Hey guys, I'm typing this on the old desktop in Abel's study. There's a big dude sleeping on the couch. I really hope he doesn't wake up. I don't know what happened to me if the Dunlops knew I was posting about all this, but I don't want to find out. So once again, thank you for reading and responding to my last post. It seemed like the advice was more mixed this time. And I guess that's because my situation has been so crazy that it's hard to know what to do. It hasn't gotten any less crazy since my last post. It's gotten crazier. Some of you are suggesting I just go ahead and tell the Dunlops about the freaky flashbacks I had about the weird ritual where Corey smeared me with something like blood when we were little kids, and the one where I remembered my kidnapping involving Andrew Brown and Corey's dad, and about the message from Corey saying that help was on its way. Others suggested that I keep my mouth shut until I find somebody neutral that I can trust. Well, yesterday morning I went ahead and laid it all out for the Dunlops. I mean, between the articles about somebody getting kidnapped who looked exactly like me, and my own memory of it, plus the DNA test, which was probably real, I figured their side of the story was legit, and I felt that I had to do something fast. Given Corey's text about help coming, when I was done telling them about it, I half expected them to say, "Well, isn't that something?" and then cook me up some pancakes or whatever. But they didn't. As I told the story, their smiles kept dropping and dropping until they were completely gone. "Your friend's father?" said Abel, giving me an intense stare. "The one who helped kidnap you. What is his name?" Jack Calloway," I said. "And what does Jack Calloway look like?" asked Cheryl, shooting me an eerie stare. I don't know. Tall? Big beer belly? Going bald?" "Does he have a scar on his face? Like this?" Abel drew his finger across his face next to his eye, right where Corey's dad had a scar. "Holy crap," I said. "You guys know him?" Abel and Cheryl looked at each other with wide eyes. They looked scared. Then Cheryl nodded, and Abel pulled his phone out of his pocket. "Are you calling the police?" I asked, relieved that someone was finally taking charge. Abel totally ignored me and dialed the number. "My house," he said into the phone. "They're coming." Then he hung up. "What?" That was the police. Do you know a cop or something? How did they know what you were talking about? What's going on? Dad?" "Your phone," said Cheryl. "It's not safe for you to have it. Hand it over, son." My brain started screaming at me that something was very wrong. "Hand over my phone? Why?" "Now's not the time to explain, son," said Abel. "You're in great danger. We all are. Hand the phone to your mother." I was a mess by then. Just raw nerves and scared out of my mind. But I wasn't going to give up my phone. "No," I said. I need it." Abel stood up and took a step towards me. I stood up and took a step towards the door. He grabbed my shoulder hard, and I felt it. It felt like he could crush me if he wanted to, and that he might just want to. I started to feel sick and dizzy. "Your phone, son," he said, holding out the hand that wasn't digging into me. There was nothing I could do. I pulled the phone out of my pocket. Tears started to well up, but as I was handing my phone over, I saw I had a missed text from Corey. "Goodbye, boy," said Abel, releasing his grip on my shoulder. "You're a freaking jerk," I said. "You're not my dad." Abel flicked my phone open and read the message. "They're close," he said to Cheryl. "Get some tea ready." Then he turned to me. "You, go to your room and stay there. I understand that you're upset. This is not because you talked back to your father. It's for your own safety." I wanted to make a run for it, out the front door, but what would I do after that? No wheels, no cash, no phone. And something told me that the Dunlops wouldn't let me just get away. There was a gas station about a mile down the road, but there was no way I could make it, not without wheels. I tried to think where they kept the keys to their car. I had no idea. I was trapped. "Forget you," I said. Then I headed up to my room, flopped on my bed, and started crying like a baby. It was the tea that Cheryl was making. I could smell it all the way down the hall and through my bedroom door. It had a weird, strong smell. In my last post, some of you mentioned that smells are the strongest triggers of memory. You were right. As soon as I smelled that terrible tea, I was hit with one hell of a memory. I was a little kid. It was before I had been kidnapped. There was a bunch of people in our house. I was supposed to be in my room, but I wasn't. I was peeking through the door of the study. That's where everybody was. They all had this patch sewn on their white shirts. I couldn't make out the symbol, but they were all wearing it. My father was there. I don't mean Abel Dunlop. I mean my real father. I don't know how I know it was my father, but I know. I don't remember anything else about him, but I know that that was my father there, sitting on the couch next to Cheryl. She was handing him a cup of tea. Abel was there too. So was Corey's dad. About 8 other people. My father took a sip of tea. Then he keeled over. I cried out, and everybody whipped their heads around and saw me peeking in. Then I was running, and that's all I remembered. Back in the nightmare present, I heard people starting to come into the house. I was staring up at the ceiling, trying to shake off the shock of the memory. I couldn't quite put it together. My real father, they did something to him. Something was in that tea, and Cheryl, my mother, I was now sure, made him drink it. And those patches, it seemed like some kind of secret society or cult or something crazy like that. My father had been part of it, and my mother, and Abel, and Corey's dad. It was too much. It was way too much. I was already too much even before that. It was already too much even before that. It was more than too much now. The window, I thought. Climb out the window and just run like hell. I got out of bed and looked out the window. I could see the front door from there. 2 dudes were standing on either side of it with big guns resting across their shoulders. Cars were pulling into the driveway as people got closer. I recognized some of them, but not all. They all had that patch sewn on their shirts. One woman looked over and saw me. A huge, terrible smile spread across her face, and she waved at me. She'd been there, in my memory. I slammed the curtains closed and curled up in a ball on my bed. Finally, I got up and put my ear to the door, trying to hear what was going on. I was way too scared to actually open the door. I couldn't hear much, just people talking, and I couldn't make out what they were saying. I went back to bed and just stayed there all night, trying to piece it together. The Browns, now in jail, kidnapped me with Corey's dad's help. They were part of that crew in Maine that seemed to be a cult or something, wearing long robes and smearing me with crap and chanting. But before I was kidnapped, there was another weird crew. These guys maybe killed my real dad, and the Dunlops were obviously deep in it. Corey's dad was a part of that crew too. These guys wore patches with some kind of symbol sewn on a white shirt. Now the robes were apparently coming down to try to get me from the patches. At least that was my best guess. Why were they fighting over me, and who were they really? I don't know. I don't have the foggiest idea. I just want it to be over. And I felt in my gut that it would be over soon, somehow. And that didn't exactly make me feel much better. People started leaving the house just as the sun was coming up. I watched them all go. Even the Dunlops left, but there were still a few cars in the driveway. And when I looked over, sure enough, there were still 2 people standing by the front door with rifles. Different people, like they'd changed shifts or whatever. I was exhausted, but also wired up, you know. I finally got the balls to creep down to the Dunlop's bedroom and look for my phone. I couldn't find it. I thought about looking around some more to see what I could dig up. Then I remembered that there was a computer in the study. That's when I headed in here and found the dude snoring away on the couch. The first thing I did was find the local police website and send off an email. I haven't heard back yet, though, so I don't even know if anybody got it, let alone if they believe it, or if help's coming. Then I started writing this update while I waited for a response. I don't know if there's much you guys can do for me at this point, but maybe you have some ideas? I don't know when or even if I can log back on to check your comments, but I'm pretty desperate at this point, so I thought I'd give it a shot. I think that something terrible is about to happen. Oh shit, I just heard a car pull in the driveway, and I hear people talking outside. I gotta go, guys. Final update. I want to thank you guys for being there with me during this nightmare. For most of it, you were all I had, the only ones I could trust. I really should be lying low right now, but I wanted to make this last post because I know a lot of you have been wondering what the hell was going on and have been worried about me. I had to cut off my last post because I heard someone coming into the Dunlop house. I didn't want to get caught at the computer, so I ran back to my bedroom. I locked the door, hopped in bed, and pulled the covers over my head. I heard footsteps getting closer. Then they were right outside my door. Somebody knocked. Calvin Dunlop? This is the police. Are you in there? We got your email. Oh, thank God. I got up and unlocked the door. As I was opening it, I wondered why there wasn't more commotion with the guards at the front door if the cops were here now. But it was too late. He shoved the door the rest of the way open and stepped in. Isn't that something? Said the cop, with that same awful smile all of these guys had plastered on their faces. Calvin Dunlop, in the flesh. Well, I'll be. That's it, I thought. I turned and was getting ready to just smash through the window and make a run for it. There were still armed guards out there by the door, but there was an armed and crazy cop in here with me. At least out there was some open space and I'd have a shot. Not much of a shot, sure, but something. The cop grabbed me by the arm. Then I wasn't going anywhere. Please, I said, too exhausted to sob. Just tell me what this is all about before you kill me. We're protecting you, Calvin, said the cop, still smiling. The smile didn't fit with the big, meaty hand gripping my arm. And I didn't feel protected from anything. Protecting me from what? I groaned. I am so honored that Mother and Father have selected me to enlighten you." He shoved me down onto the bed. "The bad people have brainwashed you, Calvin. You've forgotten your purpose. You've forgotten that in 17 days, the world is gonna burn. You've forgotten that you are the vessel that will carry us to safety." When he said that last bit, he pointed up at the ceiling. The room began to spin as I tried to form a thought. There was something about 17 days. "Who are the bad people, and why do they want me?" I asked. I figured it was a good place to start. The cop opened his mouth, but the sound of a gunshot coming from outside cut him off. I just about pissed myself, you know? Terror on top of fear on top of horror. A nice crap sandwich if there ever was one. "Isn't that something?" said the cop. "They're here. You're safe with me, Calvin." I obviously didn't feel very safe with him, especially not after he whipped out his gun. Another gunshot. I tried to look out the window, but I couldn't see very well from the bed. Then the gunshots really started popping, one after the other, like a war going on out there. In between the loud bangs, I heard tires screeching and people shouting. Damn it, a month ago, my biggest problem was making sure I didn't wake my parents up while I was in bed. You know. But then it turned out those weren't my parents after all. And now I was here. The fighting was getting closer to the house, and before long, I heard the front door bang open, and then there were people inside. The cop cocked his gun and pointed it at my bedroom door, ready to blast away whoever tried to get in. I got up as quietly as I could and crept over to the window. This was my shot. But when I looked out, I saw that there were 4 people there, crouched down right in front of my window, guarding it. They were wearing dark robes. Oh, frick. I heard people screaming. I heard people groaning in pain. Sometimes I'd hear this really gross and horrifying splattering sound, like something wet hitting something hard. I heard a ton of gunshots. Then the door to my room was flying open, and the cop started shooting at it. I ducked down and covered my ears. A second later, a body thumped down right next to me where I was crouching. It was the cop. He had a freaking arrow sticking out of his forehead. His dead eyes were staring up at the ceiling. His smile was gone. My ears were ringing like hell, but I heard it. "Nick! Calvin, listen to me. You have to come with us right now." Then I saw an arrow fly from the doorway to the window, shattering it. I looked up, and there was Corey's dad, Jack, standing there with a crossbow in his hand, dressed in one of those dark robes. "What is happening?" I shouted. "Jump out the window," said Jack. "You're safe now if you hurry." "Not until you tell me what this is about," I said. "Look, these people, they're a cult. The Dunlops, your mother. I was part of it once, too. The Starlighters, they're called. Calvin, the day you turn 16, they are going to kill you." I would turn 16 in 17 days. Crap. "And who are you guys?" "We rescue people from cults and give them their lives back," said Jack. "I will explain everything later. Right now we have to go." Corey's dad never got a chance to explain anything more than that. I heard the gun go off, felt the splatter of blood, and then he was down, right on top of the cop. I couldn't help it. I puked right on his dead body. Standing there in the doorframe was Abel Dunlop, holding a big gun. He walked slowly over to the window and let off 4 quick shots, killing the robes who were out there. "Isn't that something?" said Abel. "Old Thomas the Troublemaker. That's his real name, you know. Not Jack. Thomas. He lied to you, son. Abel reached down a bloodied hand to me. I slapped it away. You killed my father, I said, and you're going to kill me. Not at all, son. I'm going to protect you from them. If they get a hold of you, it's too terrible to think. In 17 days, you're going to kill me. Lies, said Abel. In 17 days, we're all going to be free. We're all going to the stars. It's the ones left behind who will be in trouble. A second later, Abel's severed head was on the ground, his tongue sticking out of his mouth. A half a second after that, his body hit the ground too. I blinked hard and looked up. What now? My father was standing there. My real father. The one from the memory I had where the Starlighters forced him to drink poison tea. He was holding a bloody samurai sword. Dad? Let's go, kiddo, he said. He reached out his hand and I took it. He yanked me to my feet. Jump out that window and run. He pulled a gun out from behind his back. I'll cover you, but I think it's pretty clear by now. The gunfire had definitely died down a lot. There's a Jeep, backed in by the garage. If I don't make it, just drive, son. Find Corey, he'll tell you everything. I don't know why exactly, but I 100% trusted that guy that I had only had a single memory of. This guy coming to me in the middle of the craziest crap you could imagine. I got up and jumped out the window. The front yard was covered in dead bodies. Some of them weren't quite dead. I ran by one guy who was stretching his arm out to me. He had a patch sewn to a shirt that used to be white, but was now red. The patch had a bunch of stars on it. I'll see you in the stars, Calvin, he gasped at me as I ran past. It'll really be something. My dad and I made it out of there in his Jeep. I'm going to summarize what he told me because I kept losing focus and interrupting him to ask questions. Corey had filled in some of the details, too, over the phone. When I was a kid, my parents were nerds. My dad came up with this idea to start the Starlighters Club, where they'd come up with these elaborate scenarios and act them out, like they were the last defenders of the universe against some evil aliens that were going to come and torch the place. It was just for fun. You know, like LARP. Corey's dad was part of the club. Then Abel Dunlop joined the gang, and things took an intense turn. He got a little too into it, and soon the whole group did, including my mom. She kept dropping character less and less, and then she stopped altogether. She really started believing that crap. Everybody did. Then Abel started talking about the Great Merge. That really just meant killing me when I turned 16. As soon as he heard that, my dad went to the cops. But it turned out a few of them had heard about the Starlighters and wanted to join, so they weren't any help. My dad called everyone together. He was still their captain. He was going to tell them all to cut it out and find another hobby, but Abel knew that. He had Cheryl spike my dad's tea. Nothing lethal. In fact, the plan was to keep him alive long enough to kill him right alongside me. That would give the whole thing some extra juice, apparently. Corey's dad volunteered to keep my dad in the basement. On the drive over, my dad woke up and dug his fingernails into Jack's, or Thomas's, I guess, face. That's where the scars came from. But Jack had the needle ready to go and knock my dad out again. It took a year of living in his basement, but my dad finally convinced Corey's dad that the whole Starlighter thing was batshit crazy. I mean, my dad started the thing, so he was good at explaining the mechanics of it. Corey's dad started researching cults online, even as he kept my dad in the basement because he wasn't sure at that point, and came across a couple that had made it out alive from a particularly nasty cult. The Browns, they were calling themselves now. So Corey's dad got together with them, and they decided to start their own thing called New Beginning. The idea was to rescue people from cults whenever that was possible, especially children, starting with me. They let my dad go, but they didn't tell him their plan. They figured that it was too iffy to release me to my dad. After all, he started the thing. So they kidnapped me on their own and brought me to Maine. They had studied the brainwashing technique that they were used on them, and they were able to convince me that I was really the Brown son. They declared a new beginning for me at a bonfire, with a bucket of home-brewed wine, wearing robes as a nod to the Eastern religions that had helped them cope with their own transition back to normal life. Corey's dad was not really Corey's dad. He was also a rescue case from a cult in Oregon. New Beginning grew fast across the country. At first it was people who had managed to escape cults themselves. Then it kept growing as they rescued more and more adults. Adults had a choice to join the group or just move on. Kids who were too young to fend for themselves and had no other safe options were adopted and brainwashed into a new family. Meanwhile, the Starlighters were growing too, and offshoots were forming. That's how they finally found me. I'm pretty famous in the cult world. I guess there's a place on the dark web where they all get together, and my picture has been circulating for years. Someone from my town in Maine recognized me. They alerted the Dunlops privately, and meanwhile had their kids spread all these crazy rumors about me. That I'd killed my real father, and that I was sending my adopted parents to jail. That I was crazy and dangerous. And because they were masters of manipulating people, everybody at school started to believe the rumors. Corey did at first too, but before he left for Florida, Corey's dad told Corey everything that I'm telling you now. Corey was supposed to keep totally quiet about it until I was safe, but he couldn't help but send a few texts letting me know that help was on the way. Meanwhile, my dad had been looking for me this whole time. He discovered the dark web group and followed it for years. When he saw that they had found me, he flew straight to Maine. But by the time the dark web group was talking about it in their chat room, it was already over. I was back in Florida with the Dunlops, so he turned right around and headed back to the airport. And that's where he ran into Corey's dad. At first, my dad was ready to kill Corey's dad right there in the airport. After all, the guy had kidnapped me without my dad's knowledge, so my dad kind of had a point. But he decided that rescuing me was more important than vengeance, and he knew he couldn't do it alone. So they teamed up, along with a network of new beginningers, and organized an attack on the Starlighters. It's nuts, but that's what's going on the whole time. Like I said, it took me hours and hours of going over the same thing again and again before I could finally sort it out. But that's what happened. My dad and New Beginning got together and saved me from the Starlighters. As you can imagine, I'm pretty screwed up after all of this. It's not really over. I don't think it will ever be over. My mother still might be out there. All of the offshoots of the Starlighters are still out there. How many? Well, I don't know. But I know it goes deep, and we have to be careful about our next move. I'm on my way to see Corey right now. I can't say where, and after that we're going to try to get the Browns out of prison. But man, from what I've been hearing, you've got people at the federal level involved in this crap. Not many, but enough that you have to be really careful. So I'm signing off now, guys. Don't worry about me. I've got my dad, and I'll be with my best friend soon. For a minute there, you guys were my only friends. I'll never forget that. And if I ever hear about any of you guys smelling some weird tea, well, I'll be there for you. So quoth this raven. I hope you enjoyed this story by Anna Lewis. I would like to thank you all so very much for coming. It means so much to me, and I love when you comment. A special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Ermin Case and Darren Daw. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.